Hello and welcome to today's student CPD session. The focus of this particular video is going to be enhancing your writing capabilities and moving from description to evaluation. Depending upon the question that you are answering, and in a previous video I've mentioned that you read the question thoroughly to fully understand the demands of the task, you will then ascertain as to whether you are describing a scenario, if you are recalling the events of a particular case study for law, for example, or a theorist's perspective for language, for example, or whether you are evaluating it. Often when I've read students' work, whether that is as an examiner or whether that is as a teacher, often what prevents students from getting through into the higher grade boundaries is their inability to identify when they're describing something and when they can move into evaluation. And it is often the difference between a D and a C grade, or even a C and higher. So that's what we're looking at for today. To start off with, it's worth understanding what these two words mean. Description is a spoken or written account of a person, object, or event. You are explaining to somebody, you are describing what is going on, what your view of a situation or scenario is. And that view can be something that's physical, so your physical description of a scientific experiment, or a particular media representation, but you are giving the view that you have to somebody else in as much detail as you can. Whereas evaluation is the making of a judgment, and that is different. That is different from description. That is more than description. What I want to do is give you an insight into the way that these things pan out, and where by giving you an example you can see the movement from one to another and hopefully prevent you from making the same sort of errors that other students in the past have done. Now, this is a particularly poorly drawn box, I admit. Although I illustrate for children's books, this is not obviously the same. So this is a box. I drew it in less than 10 seconds. And in my defense, I'm wanting to illustrate an evaluation, so I didn't spend a lot of time and it's not accurate. A description of this box is, you would start by saying it's blue. It shows 3 sides. The lines are joined up in most points but not necessarily connected. The author or the drawer or the artist made a mistake and so corrected the mistake. It's small. It's a 2D representation of a 3D shape. So the things that I'm doing in that description is trying to give somebody the image that I have. So if someone were listening to this video, they might be able to recreate it. They would understand that it was a sketch of a box. That's how you start. When you're moving into evaluation, you then are starting to make judgments about this box. So for example, this is a poorly drawn box that has a number of errors in its construction. The lines are not parallel, they're not in proportion, and it fails to truly represent a 3D shape. Notice the language there. It seems really critical. It seems to be pulling my poor box drawing to pieces. But that's okay. When you evaluate it, you're not necessarily being neutral. You are making those judgments. And it's okay when you make those judgments to see where the problems of an object, of a case study, of a theory, of a science experiment are. Let's have a go with another one. Also a box that I have drawn, but this one obviously using software to support. So this is also a box. If I describe this box to you, and again, pay attention to the language I'm using. This box is a still 3D side shape representing a cube. So it's a 2D drawing of a 3D shape. It is yellow, it has blue lines. It shows a sense of the object in real life, but obviously in sketch format. That's where the description goes. I'm telling you what it is. And again, if I was asking somebody to recreate that, they would be able to get a fairly decent representation. Let's move on to thinking about an evaluation. This box is much more accurate in its representation of a cube shape. The lines are all in proportion, and it shows a realistic drawing of what this would look like if someone were constructing it in a 3D model. This box is appealing and aesthetically pleasing because it's neat in its lines, they're parallel, they show right angles, and it starts to engage the observer into what is actually taking place and how they would again create that image. The evaluation there is starting to show how this box is useful, what's good about it, what it's doing. Now, if you're going to push that a little bit further, what you could say is start to evaluate its functionality. This would be an excellent picture for somebody who is assessing the size of a box for a parcel. This would be an excellent picture to teach somebody language skills. This picture would be particularly helpful for someone with a small grasp of English and looking to use phonics to develop their literacy skills. Notice you've built on the evaluation. At first you were evaluating just the box, whereas now you're evaluating the use for the box. What I would like you to do in your challenge for today is to grab an image. If you want to be particularly risky, why not pick picture number 13 on your mobile phone, count 13 pictures backwards. Alternatively, flick to a magazine or scroll through Google, or maybe even the first picture that you find on Facebook. But take the picture, create a column. One side is the description. So in theory, you could ask somebody else to do this. Write a description of what you're seeing. See if they can recreate the image that you have. That's description. Look at how you're adding the detail in. Look at how you're explaining the textures, the colours, what you're seeing. That's description. In a second column, I want you to evaluate what's happening. Think about what was going on at the time of the photograph or the image that you're evaluating. Is it a good representation of that moment? Does it communicate the emotions? Is it successful at explaining how people feel in different environments? Have a go at that practical and let me know how you get on. I would be really interested to see some of the differences between the descriptions that you offer and the evaluations.